What I'd love to do is just spend a few minutes kind of giving you some of the highlights of where we are and where the President and the administration is in terms of STEM in the Latino community. And would really love us to spend the bulk of the time getting a chance for us to kind of go back and forth with kind of questions and answers, because I think that's probably where we're going to get the best part of the conversation. But let me go ahead. First, I wanted to say thanks to you all for putting this together, and to UTSA and all the folks who are there for making this happen. It's a really important piece. The first thing I wanted to start off with is the President's 2020 goal and how STEM fits into that, into the notion of a world-class education for all our students here in the country. For the President's 2020 goal is for the United States, as so many have heard, for us to once again be number one in the world by the year 2020, having the highest percentage of our population having an undergraduate degree. So when we talk about a piece of paper being in high school, that's going to be really important for all of our kids and our sons and daughters to be successful in the 21st century with the new jobs that are being created with the new global economy. And for the President, it really comes down to a couple of reasons why it's important for us to achieve this goal. First, it's just the right thing to do. When we think about the American dream, when we think about the promise of equal opportunity for all of our kids, we know that this is the right thing to do to really make sure that we hit this goal. But in addition for it just being the right thing to do, we also understand, and the President understands, that our 2020 goal is a key to our long-term economic success as a country. And that the President's 2020 goal is the long-term agenda we have as an administration for jobs, and especially in the global economy. The President has mentioned so many times that the countries that are out-educating us today are going to out-compete us tomorrow. And when we think in particular about the STEM fields, we know that right now today, the 10 fastest-growing occupations in the country as we think about the 21st century are all STEM-related. And we think about the top 10 highest-paying college majors, they also are STEM-related. So we know that for us in the Latino community, it's really important that our kids are really an important part of what happens with a bump up in the increase for the country in terms of STEM-related kind of education. Now, in general, we talked about I mentioned how the United States used to be number one. We're now 10th in the world in terms of countries, in terms of the percentage of our population with an undergraduate degree. When we go specifically to the STEM-related fields, the goal for us there is to move from the middle to the top of the pack over the next decade as well. When we think about science, you are probably talking about this already, but the United States today ranks 21st out of the 30 OECD countries. So the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the big democratic and free market-based countries, when we think about science literacy, we're 21st out of 30. A quarter of our 15-year-olds never even reach the kind of baseline level of their competency with science. We're 13th out of 30 in the OECD when we think about science achievement of our highest performing students. When we look at math, we're 25th out of 30 in terms of math literacy. Once again, over a quarter of our kids are performing below baseline level in terms of competencies. And we're 23rd out of 30 when it comes to math achievement of our highest performing students. So when you match that with who we are as a Latino community, the President knows very well, we all know very well here in our office as well, that the future of the U.S. is inextricably tied to the future of the Latino community. We are the largest and fastest growing minority, 51 million today as we're moving into the 2010 census, 16% of the population of about 308 million. We're the largest and fastest growing minority group within the pre-K through 12 system today. So more than 11.5 million students, 20%, 1 of 5 every today is a Latino kid in the pre-K 12 system. So a lot of times we hear people who talk about the Latino community as in the future reaching those kinds of numbers. It's important for us to get the message across, which you all know very well there. That's the reality today. When we talk about at the college level, unfortunately, our numbers drop. We're the second largest in terms of numbers of being in college. So once again, this goes back to that piece of paper beyond high school. We're about 12% of the college-going population. African Americans at about 14%. We've got about just roughly around 2.2 million who are kind of in college today from the Latino community. And so we know when we talk even more specifically, not just about the broader question of community college or a four-year graduate degree, but we talk very specifically about degree attainment within the STEM-related fields, our numbers are even worse. So all of those kind of come together for us to see both the importance of what it's going to mean for the country to once again have a world-class education for all of our kids, and how even more important it's going to be for us in the Latino community. And with those numbers that we're talking about today, we can't reach those goals of the president for 2020 without the Latino community really being a core part of that. And for us doing all we can, what you all are there assembled to do today is to think through the strategies of how do we do that? What's it going to take in particular for the Latino community to bump up our numbers in the STEM fields? What kinds of things can we learn from other great programs, or what kind of things are we going to have to do that are targeted solely at the Latino community to make that happen? And so there we're going to have to see what really needs to kind of happen. Now what's interesting is that when you think back, as far back as the nation's risk in the early 1980s to today, 27 years later, almost 30 years later, when you look at all the studies that have been done during that time to really look about what we need to do, we know that there's agreement already. We know that we've got to focus on preparing all of our students. We've got to get them college and career ready. We've got to make sure that we're instilling the passion in them that's going to drive lifelong learning for all of our kids. And we even have, we know these are the goals that all those reports kind of had in common. We also know the strategies are similar. We've got to make STEM engaging for our kids. We've got to build capacity at the local, the state, and the federal levels to drive these ideas into action, to help folks be prepared to kind of make STEM more engaging for all of our students. We've got to focus on scaling what works. We always know that implementation is the hardest part, but we know there are a number of people who are doing that right now today, and so trying to make that happen is going to be an important piece as well. And then the final point that people really agree with is that we know that STEM education reform has got to be built into the overall education reform system that we're talking about. And so those are pieces that I think we all know about. Hopefully you all are discussing some of those things. The question is then, how do we really kind of go make this happen? And so the final pieces that I wanted to mention today before we get a chance to open up to question and answers is just to give you a little bit of the background on some of our key elements of what we're talking about to really make some of these past pieces happen. The first thing is we're talking about raising the bar for all of our students. We want to make sure that each student is college and career ready. We want to make sure that we've got great teachers and school leaders and principals in every school, especially those that are going to need them the most. And we've got to work, in this case, building the capacity of the teachers and the leaders in the schools to make STEM engaging for everyone. And finally, that we're really kind of helping foster education and excellence, that we take to scale these pieces that are working already, that we kind of look to some of those new ideas, and once again see how we really make them work within the Latino community. But at the end of the day, the final thing I wanted to reinforce is that we know that this can't be separate, that STEM has got to be a key part of the well-rounded education reform that we're talking about for our kids as well. So I just wanted to give you some of those, the background. That's what we think about in terms of the President's 2020 goal. Some of the things we've learned along the way from the different reports that are STEM-related and how those apply to the Latino community. Let me kind of stop there, because what I'd love to do is just to see if, to get into the question and answer period. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background. There's a lot more details on the blueprint we've put forward for reauthorization. I haven't gone into those details. I just wanted to kind of give you the framework and kind of where we are as we think about how we work with the Latino community on the STEM pieces. But let me stop there and